Is Satan real? If so, is he actively involved in the affairs of this world? Can we see evidence of satanic influence around us? Hi, this is Dr. Michael Bogart with Aspect Ministries, and I've been making a series of videos on the occult presence in our society. In my previous two videos, I began by acknowledging that some people will immediately write me off as a conspiracy theorist. And that's okay, because what I covered in these first two videos were what I see as subtle occult meanings behind common symbols and corporate logos. I stated that I could be mistaken. I could be looking for evil where it really doesn't exist. And actually, if that turns out to be the case, I would be greatly relieved. But looking at the big picture of all of these signs and symbols as a whole, I think the evidence points to a deliberate effort at some level to introduce the occult into the public consciousness and thereby normalize it. In this video, I will tackle things that are not innuendo, but overt, clear satanic themes and symbols. Satanism on full display. So let's be transparent. If you hadn't guessed, I am a committed follower of Jesus, a Christian. The Bible tells us that Satan has been active in human society and in the cosmos in general since the very beginning of time. And here's what 1 John 5:19 says about that. We know that we are children of God and that the whole world is under the control of the evil one. In the Bible, Satan appears as the seducing serpent in Genesis 3, who sowed doubt and distrust into the minds of our first ancestors. Yes, I know many of you are saying, oh, come on. You don't believe in that Adam and Eve stuff, do you? Really? Well, I may make some videos on the evidence for the reliability of the early portions of the Bible at some later time, but that's not my purpose here. So humor me and just hear me out. Satan appears in the book of Job, which, by the way, is a very early book. He is shown as the enemy of God and the accuser of God's people. Satan is present early in Jesus' ministry when he attempts to derail God's purpose of redemption in sending his Son into the world. We see evidence of Satan's downfall in the Gospels as Jesus broke Satan's hold over people's lives by healing and freeing those under his cruel bondage. We see how Satan's kingdom was forever crushed in Jesus' death on the cross and in his resurrection. The sign and first fruits of the devil's complete destruction yet to come. We are warned many times in the later books of the New Testament about Satan's schemes to tempt, accuse, and deter God's people from living in ways that please God and fulfill our calling. The Bible treats the topic of Satan and his dark kingdom as very real then. It depicts him as a defeated enemy whose ability to cause havoc in the world is now limited in both scope and time, but still very real. His power and days are coming to an end, but like an enemy who has suffered a defeat that cannot be reversed, yet retains some ability to resist and destroy, we still face a dangerous foe. Very dangerous, because he is cornered, wounded, and knows his time is short. Now, with that said, how about satanic presence in history? Of course, I don't have time to even scratch the surface on this, but here's a taste. Most people aren't aware of the huge serpent theme among many cultures in the ancient world. I'm not even including references to the serpent in the Bible. The serpent theme was a big deal among all sorts of other peoples. Here are some examples from ancient Greece. This is a Greek-style oil jar showing a woman feeding a sacred snake who guarded the golden apple trees in the Garden of Hesperides. What an uncanny resemblance to the story of Eve and the serpent. Here's a replica of the statue of the goddess Athena, patron of wisdom, that once stood in the Parthenon in Athens. Notice the serpent by her side, presumably giving her wisdom. Serpents were also popular features in ancient Roman art, especially associated with certain religious rites. Here is such a scene from the ruins of Pompeii. Notice the serpents associated with worship in this wall mural uncovered from the ashes of Mount Vesuvius in 70 AD. In India, there has been worship of the serpent deity Naga from ancient times. In China, the twin male-female serpents Fuji and Nuwa were said to have created the human race. Nordic and Germanic legends from pre-Christian Europe feature evil serpents and dragons pretty significantly as well. And of course, the Mesoamerican, Aztec, and Mayan cultures featured Quetzalcoatl and Kukulkan as a beautiful feathered serpent deity thought to have created mankind. The Aztecs thought that Spanish conquerors were somehow associated with Quetzalcoatl when they arrived in Mexico in 1520. There are a number of other examples that I could give if I had more time, but I've got to keep these videos on the short side. All right, with that bit of background, let's look at a few examples of Satan's desperate efforts to control society and destroy God's coming kingdom. Let's begin with the pentagram. The pentagram is simply an upright, five-pointed star, which has been used to symbolize a variety of concepts in many cultures throughout history. Some of them are occult-oriented. Some sources say that it may have been used in early Christianity to represent the 5 wounds of Jesus. Now, that's the first I've heard of that. I may not be the most learned scholar of the ancient world, but my guess is that if so, it was never an important symbol used by Christians. The star is used in the political realm, though. A 5-pointed star is used in the flags or emblems of many countries today, including countries as diverse as the United States, Libya, China, Turkey, Liberia, and a number of others. So the star itself can be a fairly neutral symbol. However, an inverted pentagram or upside-down 5-pointed star is associated with occult groups. It is used by the Church of Satan in its official logo, with a goat's head incorporated and superimposed into the star shape. Also, the 5-pointed star, usually upright and occasionally inverted, but surrounded by a circle, is called a pentacle. This symbol is widely used by Wiccans and others practicing witchcraft. Look for the pentacle in jewelry worn by celebrities, politicians, and others. Next, I'll mention the Baphomet figure. This very sinister symbolic figure has become a familiar one only in more recent times. Now, originally it seems to have been used in the ancient world by the Gnostics around the time of Christ. It was a symbol of balance, apparently. It's pictured as a winged male-female human entity with the head and feet of a goat. The body is covered with a number of other esoteric and occult symbols. In the early 20th century, the occultist Aleister Crowley adopted the Baphomet for his anti-Christian religious rites. In 2015, a Satanist group commissioned a mobile Baphomet statue to be used in various locations as a protest against the traditional displays of the Ten Commandments, such as in front of courthouses, schools, and so on. The Baphomet is said by some to be used in satanic religious rites by several esoteric societies, even into the 21st century. Watch for its appearance in public more and more over the coming years. Moving on to more overt satanic themes in popular culture. Have you noticed the increasingly overt satanic themes of the Super Bowl halftime shows from 2012 to 2023? Each year during this time, the shows have consistently revolved around symbols that have clear references to Satan. Programs, music, and dance are specifically linked to occult practices, human sacrifice, sexual rituals, and references to demonic power. The goal seems to be to normalize the occult, neutralize natural distaste for such things, shame those who object, and thereby grant dominion over the minds of viewers. A prime example would be the Egyptian sun disk motif, which dominated the set in 2012. This was a relatively mild introduction to the series of occult shows over the following years. Since then, performers have impersonated occult figures, mimicked satanic ritualistic gestures, and performed dances that had many trappings of dark practices. Sets have featured occult themes and esoteric symbols from the upper levels of Freemasonry, such as the all-seeing eye and the sacred triangle or pyramid, as well as songs with lyrics directly referring to elements of witchcraft and pagan worship. Perhaps the most blatant example came in the 2023 show featuring Kim Petras and Sam Smith performing the song Unholy, in which the satanic images became unmistakable to all but the most mesmerized. So is Halloween satanic? Well, let's talk about it. Halloween is often seen by many people as simply a time to celebrate the arrival of autumn. It's an occasion to party for a night in costumes, and for kids, it's a time to get loads of treats. The term Halloween, of course, is a shortened version of All Hallows' Eve, and it seems to have been originally a pagan festival centered around the fall equinox. As was standard procedure at the time, the Christian church attempted to reorient the pagan festival toward a more biblical focus. The idea was to transform it into a preparation day before the celebration of All Saints' Day on November 1st. All Saints' Day commemorates the flood of Noah and the restart of human life on earth. The religious observance of All Saints' Day has been de-emphasized in the past couple of centuries and is now completely overshadowed in North America and Europe by the secular, that is, non-religious festivities of Halloween. As I mentioned, the contemporary observance of Halloween as a non-Christian holiday seems to have its roots in paganism, specifically in the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. October 31st and November 1st were believed to be the dividing line between autumn and winter, and the beginning of a new year in which various social and legal cycles could begin again. It was also thought to be the time when the veil between the natural and the supernatural worlds was at its thinnest, allowing easier passages back and forth for spirits and deceased souls. Because of this connection to Samhain, Halloween has an occult flavor featuring witches, ghosts, vampires, and other spooky entities. It isn't surprising that Wiccans, Satanists, and other occultists consider Halloween as a highlight of the year. You can hardly walk into a store during the early fall without being bombarded with the occult in the form of costumes, products, decorations, and other knickknacks that are either subtly or overtly satanic. In Hispanic culture as well, the theme of the skull is highly featured about this same time of the year in their observance of the Day of the Dead, El Dia de los Muertos. Now, there are a lot more examples that I could give, but I'm out of time in this video. As I've said previously, I could be overstating the case, and actually I hope I am. But there's no doubt that there is a growing, steadily increasing influence of the occult and of satanic themes in North American culture, which is alarming. I challenge you to look around. See if what I am saying bears out in what you observe around you. Personally, I don't think there's any doubt about the overt occultic influence in things like the Super Bowl or in the increasingly dark themes of Halloween. And if we go back to ancient times, there is no doubt that the serpent was a symbol of wisdom and protection in many pagan cultures. And this is what you would expect if Eve really was tempted by the serpent in the Garden of Eden, tempted into believing that humans could become like God, that it was the serpent who was the true source of wisdom rather than God who created everything. And of course, those who continued down that path would consider the devil to be their source of guidance, wisdom, and personal success. And obviously the Bible takes the other point of view, that it was a dark wisdom and not a beneficial one, that the serpent's wisdom was ultimately a doomed and destructive path for all of us. So what do we do? Well, if you're not a follower of Jesus and you agree that the influences of the occult are growing all around us, then maybe it would be good to stop and ponder where all of this is leading. And it's not leading to a good place. So then what's the alternative? Maybe it's time to change course and follow the light. Follow the source of light, Jesus Christ. The Gospel of John chapter 1 verse 9 calls him the true light that gives light to everyone. And if you are a follower of Jesus, don't you think it's about time to stand up? Don't you think it's about time to pray? Don't you think it's about time to do something to stop this destruction of our lives, our culture, and those we hold dear? The evil enemy will flee in terror at the presence of Jesus in us. We just have to wake up, buck up, pray up, and stand up. And I, for one, think it's high time. This is Dr. Michael Bogart with Aspect Ministries. We'll see you next time.